Welcome in, everybody, to our final episode of our T20 Cricket World Cup podcast for Vendetta Sports Media. I'm Jerry Walker, and alongside me, as always, is Jarrod Prosser. And Jarrod, the tournament's done. We had our final, England versus Pakistan, which we'll get to in a minute. We fortunately avoided some rain in Melbourne, but it doesn't seem like that's quite the same thing for you.
No. The rain, it started to drizzle a little bit in Melbourne, but pretty much almost immediately after the match finished, it started absolutely pelting, like bucketing down where I am about an hour west of Melbourne. So I would expect that initial burst of rain is probably hitting Melbourne right about now. But there is more coming. So anybody who's in Melbourne, it's going to get wet overnight. It's going to be wet on Monday. But ultimately, after so many matches washed out in Melbourne and Sydney over the Super 12s, I'm glad I'm glad we were able to avoid it, because the final of all things, you don't want to see a Duckworth-Lewis matchup in the final.
No, absolutely not. It just would have been taken away from everything that is the T20 World Cup final, but
Yeah.
we'll hop into that. England versus Pakistan, and it was a rematch of the 1992 World Cup. Same two teams, same venue, different format. It was a 50 over one. This was a T20, but England this time end up getting the win. England won by 5 wickets, 138 for 5 to 137 for 8. And now they hold both the T20 World Cup and the ODI 50 over World Cup titles, which are the two formats of white ball cricket. So, what are your just initial thoughts on this match?
Look, England have been the dominant white ball side in world cricket for a reasonable amount of time now. And it seems pretty clear that Ben Stokes is the most dominant white, or at least the best big game, at the very least, the best big game player in white ball cricket. For those who don't remember, back in 2019, he was the guy that steered India home over New Zealand in somewhat controversial fashion. But England wouldn't have come within the straight of winning that match if not for Stokes. And quite frankly, in this one, we spoke about it in the last pod that for Pakistan to have any chance in this, they needed to get through that big two at the top of the order of Hales and Butler and try and expose that middle order of England, that soft underbelly. They did that, and ultimately Stokes, with a nice little cameo from Moeen Ali, it was Stokes that led them home. He does it again. Whenever there's a big match to be played, Ben Stokes is the man who steps up.
Yeah, we'll get into England's inning in a little bit, but absolutely Ben Stokes, big time player, made for big time games, and he showed that once again this morning or this evening in Australia. But as far as the Pakistan inning goes, a big thing that stood out to me was they could never really establish much of partnerships. They got around 38, 40, but never anything over that 40 mark, which would have really given them a boost. And starting out with Mohammad Rizwan going for 15 from 14, and it was kind of 1 for 29 when he went out.
Yeah, look, Babar Azam and Mohammad Rizwan, they looked scratchy. Like they didn't really look like they were going to go out, but they really struggled to get away. And they're not the quickest of scorers in the best of conditions. But it was one of those things where if they could have stuck around for 8 or 9 overs and got that score up to about, say, 60, 70, somewhere in that range, you could see them maybe teeing off from there. And Shan Masood, Muhammad Harris, Iftikhar Ahmed, aggressive batsmen behind them. So you could still see the theory of, okay, let's set ourselves a nice platform here. It wasn't an easy pitch to play on. Mm-hmm. So let's build up a nice platform where we can swing hard late on. But ultimately, Sam Curran, who, not to spoil it later on, but was named man of the tournament after the match, he came in and once again did the job, took out Rizwan, got him chopping on. And that started, that was that first wicket that fell. And as you said, Jerry, it was the start of regular wickets. Every time Pakistan seemed they were going to get a partnership going, somebody fell.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just a little bit difficult once they lost that first wicket to really establish anything. I know they went 39 for 1, I believe, in the power play, which
Yeah.
we've seen in the past couple matches. That's where you really want to explode and take advantage of only having, I believe, a couple fielders out wide and outside the inner
Yeah.
circle.
Out of the circle.
Yeah, but like you said, Sam Curran stepped up massively for England and just bowled an incredible match once again. 3 wickets for 12 runs in his 4 overs. But as far as the batting side goes for Pakistan, Babar Azam, 32 from 28, 2 4s, no 6s. And their lead man today was Shan Masood, 38 runs from 28 balls. But after that, it was kind of a relatively big drop off from the rest of the order.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I tweeted out when Mohammed Harris, the 21-year-old who's been a bit of a revelation in his few matches in the tournament, when he came to the crease, I did send a tweet out saying if Harris can accelerate, Pakistan, they've still got wickets in hand. They could put up a really good score here. And I think it was maybe 4 balls later, Harris went out. So again, sorry, Pakistan, I've put the moz on your man there. But Shan Masood, 38 off 28, as you mentioned, Shadab Khan had a nice little 20. Those two had a 44, 45 run partnership. They looked like they could have restored something, a good chaseable total to this Pakistan innings. But ultimately, it was once again that man, Sam Curran, got rid of Masood, picked up Muhammad Nawaz, who's a dangerous lower order batsman. And yeah, the innings just kind of petered out from there. Those overs when you really want to start accelerating, which is that sort of 12th to about 16th, 17th, Pakistan did pretty well there. And that's when you really need to hit the floor hard, hit the gas. And Pakistan just couldn't. They lost 3 wickets in those last 5 overs, including Shan Masood. And the innings kind of flatlined. There was still a platform 5 overs to go for Pakistan to hit 160, and it just didn't happen. And a lot of that comes down to Sam Curran and Chris Jordan as well, who probably wouldn't have been playing in this match if Mark Wood hadn't have pulled up lame a few matches ago. So Jordan, very good one-day player, very good T20 player. He proved his worth in this one.
Yeah, Chris Jordan got 2 wickets, as you mentioned, for 27 runs, and both his wickets came late, one in the 18th over and one in the final over to kind of secure the total for Pakistan. But like you said, they got 4 wickets taken in the last 4 overs. It just collapsed down the stretch, and there's nothing they could really do to save or get themselves a super big chase for England or a big total for England to chase.
Yeah, and I've got to admit, you looked at that score, 137, and you thought, oh, okay, this could be over really quickly if Hales and Butler get going. But yeah, there's an old saying in cricket, you can't judge the wicket until both sides have batted. And this was definitely a harder pitch to play on than what it perhaps looked on television. It looked like Pakistan were really struggling to break the shackles of England bowling, but it may have been that they were, struggling to break the shackles of the bowling plus the conditions. And when England batted, we saw that as well. They really did struggle to score quickly, just like the Pakistanis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw Alex Hales in the semifinal go up for, I think, 86 or 87 runs. This time,
and that doesn't even tell the story of that innings. Like, it was an electric 86.
He was just on a tear. I believe he finished with 7 6s and 4 or 5 4s. It was just an incredible inning for him against India. But against Pakistan, faced 2 balls, got 1 run, and was out on the 6th ball of the first over.
And what a ball too!
Yeah.
Shaheen Shah Afridi was like he looked like he could have just about won this game for Pakistan before he got injured. And oh man, that really robbed us of a grandstand finish when he went down. But that ball to get rid of Hales was a gem. There are very few batsmen in the world that would have played that ball.
Yeah, he absolutely just took it from him, and Hales didn't really have much of a chance of anything. But you hinted at it a little bit there. Shah Afridi got injured in his bowling, or was he was fielding, I believe, when he got hurt.
Yeah, he took
He's like
the
split.
an outfield catch to get rid of Harry Brook, who batted
Yeah,
pretty well,
yeah,
Harry Brook. But we'll get to that because we probably should cover the overs leading up to that. Josh Butler, 26 or
yeah,
17, he he batted pretty well, strike rate of 152, which is perfectly fine for a batter of his capabilities, but he just it seemed to be all or nothing. Like he seemed to either hit the boundary or just not hit it at all. Phil Saltz came in, and Salt's just not as good as David Milan. Like, let's face it, Milan's one of the best white ball batsmen in the world, and Saltz scratched around for his 10 before Harris Ralph got rid of him. And that was when, but when Salt went out, that was what brought Stokes to the wicket, and that was where England started to solidify a little bit.
yeah. It was when Salt went out. It was England were 32 for two, and that's when Ben Stokes came in. Joss Butler ended up going out a little bit after that, but then it was really Ben Stokes paired with Harry Brook and Mo Malley, and those partnerships kind of most of it, a lot of it being on the back of Ben Stokes, were on fire. His partnership
Mm.
with Harry Brook, they went for 39 runs. And then his partnership with Mo and Ali went for 48 runs and kind of just brought that total within reach for England just to finish off in the last couple of
Yeah, yeah, it was that Stokes and Ali partnership that got it done. Halfway through the innings, 60 balls remaining, England only needed 61 runs. Like they were well and truly in control of this. And Pakistan, to their credit, bowled superbly for the next 4 overs. They'd, only being 1 run behind the balls required to being something like 14 or 15 behind it before, you know, Shaheen Shah Afridi, you know, we mentioned took that catch off for Harry Brook off Shadab Khan's bowling. And just want to get to the bowling figures on this one actually before we go on. This bowling performance was really, really good overall. Shadab Khan 1 for 20, Harris Ralph 2 for 23. Naseem Shah wasn't bad for his none for 30. Mohammed Wasim was dangerous. He was a bit wayward early, but he always looked like picking up more than just the 1 wicket he got. And Afridi, 2.1 overs, 1 for 13. He was magnificent. But ultimately, you get such a small target, it's hard to defend. But anyway, back at the ranch. Um, yeah, when Afridi took that catch, he sort of slipped, and it didn't look like anything too untoward. Like he sort of sprawled out and starfished on the turf, but it didn't look like anything too bad. But then all of a sudden, a couple of balls later, he's limping off, and Pakistani hearts are in mouths. He did come back onto the pitch, and he looked really quite loose and limber, but bowled his first ball of his third over, and these were the key. This is the key time for Pakistan. Harris Ralph was on fire. Wasim had got his radar back aligned, and if Afridi comes in and bowls like Afridi can, it may have just, even without wickets, it just may have pushed the mathematical equation beyond England. But he bowls one ball, and it's well and truly off pace. So off pace that Ali was just miles ahead of it. And instantly you just looked at him and went, no, he's not right. Something is not right. He limped off the field, and the part-time bowler of Takar Ahmed, the off spinner, came on and bowled, almost picked up a wicket. He almost got Ben Stokes out. The ball fell just short of, I think it was Shadab Khan.
Yeah.
And then the next two balls go for 4 and 6.
Yeah.
And it just completely swung the impetus of the match. The next over, the first two balls from that over, which I think was Naseem Shah from memory.
It was
Mo and
it was
Ali.
Mohammed Wasim was
Oh,
bowling
it was
that
Wasim.
over.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Ali took them both behind square leg for 4. So all of a sudden, from being really not quite in control of the game, but certainly in the ascendancy, Pakistan had conceded 18 runs off 4 balls and lost their best bowler. And from there, you just felt like England had it under control.
Yeah, completely. And I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but from at the beginning of the second half of the match, so the 11th to 14th overs, England only got 12 runs from the
Yeah.
4 overs, which just showed that the superbness of the Pakistan
Mm.
bowling at that point, making sure they're not getting runs. They'd only lost 1 wicket, but they were making sure there wasn't runs. And then that 16th over when Iftikhar
Yeah.
Ahmed came in, it was 13 runs in that one, then 16 in the next over. And at that point, it was kind of just only a matter of time for England to finish the job and end up winning the World Cup again.
Yeah, Pakistan needed wickets at that stage, and Harris Ralph only had one over left. Mohammed Wasim came in and picked up Ali late on. Afridi obviously couldn't bowl, so the strike bowlers were out for Pakistan at that stage. And as you said, Jerry, it's it was just playing out the string. Pakistan were brave, but ultimately, quite literally hobbled in their effort to win that last match.
Yeah, and I wonder what would have happened had Afridi been stayed healthy and hadn't gotten hurt, because he gets one wicket, he gets maybe Stokes out or Ali out a little bit earlier, and who knows, maybe Liam Livingston would have been able to get it off, but there's a chance that he doesn't, and kind of England implodes. And by looking at the atmosphere, at least on TV, seemed very much one-sided in the favor of Pakistan.
Yeah. So. Oh God, yeah. No, it absolutely was. A little over 80,000 at the MCG, and a very, very partisan Pakistani crowd. It was like I've often said that the MCG is India's home away from home, but clearly it's Pakistan's home away from home as well. It was. I would have loved to have been there, to be honest. It sounded like an astonishing atmosphere just through the telly. So, but yeah, ultimately Ben Stokes, the man does it again. A big four to get himself, to basically break any sort of last resistance Pakistan had, and then chips one through mid wicket to win the World Cup.
Yes, absolutely. He finished with 52 runs from 49 balls. He had 5 boundaries, only the 1-6, but he did what he had to do, and he stepped up when England needed him the most and helped them win their second World Cup in 2 years.
Yeah,
3 years now. So,
and look, it's as I mentioned, the Pakistani bowling was on the whole very, very good. Iftikhar got carted in his 5 balls, but he's a part-timer who wasn't expected to bowl. He came on no warm-up, replacing the star of this Pakistani team. So you can't put too much blame on him. Mohammed Wasim, as I mentioned, he was wayward earlier and got taken out a bit, but once he got pulled out of the attack by Shadab and then put back in later, he was much better. He's frighteningly fast, Mohammed Wasim. But once he had his line and length right, he was tough to get away. Afridi looked superb in his 2 overs. Shadab Khan himself was tough to get away, and Harris Ralph. If Pakistan win this match, Harris Ralph is probably man of the match. I thought he bowled absolutely brilliantly.
Yeah, absolutely. Ralph was superb and controlled England much more than a lot of the other bowlers were at times. But instead, it was England getting the win, and England bowler, as you mentioned, Sam Curran being named both the player of the match and the player of the tournament, he was just a star this entire tournament. First match, I believe he had a 5-for. Then he finished with 3 today, and I believe it was 13 wickets total throughout the tournament. So
yeah, he was 16 overall with the 3 today.
Oh, so right.
Yeah. No, he was magnificent. 16 wickets in the tournament at an average of 10. Like that's absurd. That is remarkable bowling.
Yeah.
And he was economical as well. Like he didn't concede a lot of runs. And as we mentioned in this innings, it was quite indicative of his other wickets as well. He seemed to take them at the right moments. Today was a perfect example. Pakistan are building something with their openers. Curran comes in and gets rid of Rizwan. Pakistan are building a nice little rearguard action through Shan Masood and Shadab Khan. He comes in and gets rid of Shan Masood. Then picks up Nawaz to really poke on that wound for Pakistan. And look, I got to admit, I don't know whether he should have been man of the match in this one. I would probably give it to Stokes. And you could also make an argument for Adil Rashid with his bowling as well. But I would probably have given it to Stokes. But as far as man of the tournament, I have no objection to Sam Curran getting it. He was brilliant all through.
Yeah, not at all. I agree with you. I think Stokes, with the way he played and the way he stepped up and faced the adversity of and a bad start from England. I think he was probably deserving for player of the match. But
Yeah.
Curran has been by far England's best player in this entire tournament on a consistent basis, and deservingly so gets the player of the tournament. But before we take a quick break ahead of when we'll be getting into our team of the seasons, talk about what stood out to us the most, who excited us, what match was the best. I think you guys might know
We know the
one
answer to
is.
that one
We've
already.
talked about that probably a bit. What teams surprised us, disappointed us. We'll get into all of that, but before we do, I just wanted to bring up to know on Shadab Khan. He became the all-time leading wicket taker for Pakistan in T20 cricket.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a pretty impressive feat for him.
Yeah, and it's a shame. Like, it's great that it happened in a World Cup final. It's a shame that they couldn't bring home the bacon for the skipper. But yeah, went past the other Shaheen Afridi, or Shahid Afridi, I should say. So former maverick leg spinner and wild and crazy batsman that he was. Yeah, no, he's a very, very good all rounder. Shadab Khan showed it again today. You know, batted well, bowled well, fielded well. He's a genuine star, genuine world star.
Absolutely. It's a guy who's just very much deserving of now having that record for Pakistan. But we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back with the rest of our T20 final day coverage. Hey guys, we're back and we're getting ready to talk about what our match of the tournament was. And Jarrod, I really think there is just one match that stood out for all of us and everyone in the cricketing world, and that was India versus Pakistan.
Oh, look, there were some great matches in this tournament, quite frankly. But India Pakistan back on the 23rd of October at the MCG was like, that is one of the greatest matches that I've ever seen of cricket. It was astonishing. Yeah, I like, just right from the get-go, dominant Indian bowling performance at the start, and then, you know, Shan Masood, Iftikhar Ahmed both hit 50s to, you know, to blunt what was looking like a brilliant bowling attack from India. And you know, we were keen to see how India would go, considering they were missing oh God, I've gone blank on their quick Bumrah, Jasprit Bumrah.
Yeah.
You know, their best, like the best bowler they've had for a number of years, Jasprit Bumrah. Keen to see how he would or how they would cover his absence. And Arshdeep Singh took 3 wickets in that innings to start off what was a brilliant, like a wonderful tournament for that young man. And you looked at this and go, okay, 159. I don't know how they managed to eke out 159, but it didn't start well for the Indians. They lost both the openers, Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul, for 4 runs apiece. And then Virat Kohli, King Kohli, put on a masterclass of batting, like 82 not out of 53 deliveries. Came in at first drop and, you know, lasted the entire innings. You know, was not out at the end and just carried this Indian team home. And even in those last few overs, just so many twists and turns in those last few overs with, you know, potential runouts and dropped catches and just an amazing match of cricket.
Yeah, it was, they really had a little bit of everything. And I believe even the spider cam got hit with a ball at one point in the
Yes,
Pakistan inning, which it just shows that everything was happening in that match in front of over 90,000 fans at the MCG, which you've alluded to before is the India's home away from home. And even for the final, it was Pakistan's home away from home. So atmosphere was incredible. The drama on the field was incredible. Couple no balls, a little bit of excitement in the last couple overs that we could talk about for hours on end. But are there any other thoughts on this?
If people who've been listening to this series, we have spoken about this match. I think every single pod since it's happened. It's like
one way or
burned
another
into us. Yeah, like that is one of those matches that you know, like Fox Cricket Channel or something like that is going to replay that as a classic for the next like 30 or 40 years. It's just an astonishing 3.5 hours of T20 cricket. And as much as there were some great matches in this tournament, including the final, nothing will hold a candle to this match. I would be shocked if we see a T20 match as good as this in the next decade. It was
It,
that good.
yeah, it was incredible. And I mean, I even forced one of my roommates to watch the entire match with me the next day because it was 3 a.m. start here. I watched the end of the India innings, but
Mm.
we watched that whole thing, and for a guy who had never watched cricket before, he was loving it. And as you've said before, if you ever want to get into cricket, watch this T20 match between Pakistan and India. You'll be hooked right away from it.
Oh yeah, it was a dead set gateway drug to the sport.
It
That match,
really
it was
will.
remarkable.
But
Oh,
as impressive as that match was, were there any other kind of matches that stood out to you, or some that you were a little disappointed about?
oh, look, in T20 cricket, particularly the World Cup, where you know, you get high-end cricketing nations with developing cricketing nations, you're going to get blowouts. That happens. Obviously a disappointing match to me was one with a developed cricketing nation in New Zealand and a apparently developing cricketing nation in Australia.
Mm.
Um, Watching them double our score was, oh, that was so damn hard to take. It still hurts. Um,
Because really, at the end of the day, that's kind of what the big difference was in Group One. Was it was
yeah,
that net run rate, and that really gave New Zealand a boost and really hurt the Aussies.
yeah, it did. It did. Um, yeah, there was some astonishing batting performances. South Africa against Bangladesh was electric. New Zealand against Australia was fantastic as well. Pakistan Zimbabwe played out a real thriller. Bangladesh Zimbabwe played out a thriller themselves. Uh, South Africa and India played a quite a tight one as well. Um, you've got to look at it. I guess a disappointing match would be South Africa going down back-to-back matches, like going down massively to Pakistan. They just got their asses handed to them,
Mm.
and then followed that up with a loss to the Dutch, which saw them go from control of the group to missing the semi-finals altogether. So, um, I guess good matches from a neutral point of view, but from a South African point of view, they'd be devastated at those two.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as far as other matches went that were kind of exciting, any of there was just so many that were kind of close, but India
Mm,
Bangladesh wasn't exactly one of those. And there were a lot of matches that we saw canceled or delayed because of rain.
yeah,
Quite a few Duckworth Lewis method matches, which was a real bummer at that point, that little stretch, because took away England Australia from us, a game that would have we could have talked about for a while had it happened. So that was a little
yeah.
bit of a bummer, but there's been some impressive teams as well. And who kind of stands out to you? What teams have impressed you the most?
Well, yeah, we'd be remiss not to mention Pakistan. You look at the three semi-finalists. India were expected to be there, England were expected to be there, and New Zealand, it was either going to be New Zealand or Australia, were expected to be there. Pakistan were not expected to be there out of their group. They were considered a long way off both the Indians and the South Africans, and especially when they lost not just to India, but lost their second match as well. The semi-finals looked a mile away for the Pakis, and to regroup the way they did, they lost people to injury along the way, and found like they really found someone in young Harris, the batsman.
Mm.
To regroup the way they have was incredibly impressive, and even in tough conditions tonight, and then losing Shaheen Shah Afridi, they still battled right to the end. They pushed this to within one over. So I, Pakistan impressed me mightily in this one, but I think I need to make a shout out to the Dutch here.
Yeah.
Sri Lanka were better than what I thought they would be. Zimbabwe had some impressive players, some impressive young players, importantly, but the Dutch were fantastic. I didn't expect them to get through the preliminary stages. Um, I expected Namibia to get through along with Sri Lanka, and the Dutch came through, and they didn't make up the numbers. They finished, as we mentioned, they took out South Africa, but they won two games. They finished fourth in their group. They finished ahead of Bangladesh, who are a test playing nation, and Zimbabwe, who are a test playing nation. So the Dutch have this is a tentpole performance for Dutch cricket in general. This can be something that they can really build on, and they found some really good players, both players that might have Dutch heritage from Australia, New Zealand, England, those sort of places, and we'll get to one of those later. But a guy like Basteleda, who is 22 years old and is Dutch born and bred, he was very, very impressive in this tournament, and I will speak more on him later. But yeah, they found some real talent for this tournament, the Dutch, and they should be extremely proud of their performance.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That was going to be my team that really stood out and impressed me was the Dutch because, like we said, I don't think either of us expected them even to win a match in
No.
the Super 12, unless even though we both didn't think they'd even get out of the first round. But in the Super 12, I thought they would go in and go 0 for 5. But sure enough, 2 wins. They beat Zimbabwe. And then the biggest upset in the World Cup this year, beating South Africa on that last day to send South Africa home and give Pakistan a chance, which that's all they needed was a small chance and ended up in the World Cup final. But
Yeah, as you mentioned, neither of us thought they'd win a game. We thought they would, we thought making it into the Super 12s was, yeah, that was a halcyon moment for them. But to win a couple of games, including beating a powerhouse in the Proteas, yeah, you can't say enough about this Dutch side. They performed so far above expectation.
yeah, absolutely. But on the other side, there's a couple teams that sort of disappointed, and I'll start out with one that went out in the first round, the West Indies,
Yeah.
where finished last in their group behind Scotland, Ireland, Zimbabwe in that order, descending order. And it was just one win, but it wasn't pretty cricket. It wasn't the fun West Indies teams of the past. It was just a rough go for them all around.
Yeah, and look, West Indian cricket hasn't really been the same for quite, I grew up with the powerful 80s and 90s West Indian sides, the one where, they seem to have about 36'5" fast bowlers that could kill you.
Mm-hmm.
They had Gordon Greenidge and Desmond Haynes and Brian Lara and Richie Richardson, the great Vivian Richards, arguably the best batsman I've ever seen. Um, those sort, like, you can never expect to replicate a generation like that, but the West Indies have still had some really, really good players since the turn of the century. Yes, they've had their down moments, but and look, this tournament was a changing of the guard. Outside of really Jason Holder, there weren't any of the old West Indian stars in this side. Nonetheless, you expected them to at least make it out of the preliminary stages. Yeah, Zimbabwe are pretty decent, but to finish last in a group that has Ireland and Scotland in it, that's appalling for West Indian cricket. Like, this is, and look, the recriminations have already started within West Indian cricket. There's talk of root and branch reviews and all that sort of thing. So perhaps that's what's needed. But yeah, there is literally nothing that the West Indians could take out of this tournament.
Yeah, no, it's one for them to completely forget and disregard. But the other team that kind of disappointed me was I expected more from Afghanistan.
Okay, yeah. Well, I
They
guess they were the only
they were the only one
winless
who,
team out of the Super
yeah.
12s.
But I guess with that being said, they only played 3 matches with 2
Mm,
being rained out. But
mm.
I had a little bit of a feeling they would at least get 1 or 2 wins against probably Ireland, Sri Lanka, but just nothing came for them.
Yeah, they were definitely the dark horse in what was a tough group. I mean, New Zealand, England, Australia are all powerhouses, but yeah, they were the one that you thought could throw the cat amongst the pigeons, and they didn't fire a shot. But look, for me, I'll stick in the same group for my most disappointing side. I weighed up the West Indies, but ultimately the West Indies were in those preliminary rounds for a reason. My most disappointing team is clearly Australia. Starting with that absolute bare bottom spanking they got from New Zealand in the first Super 12 game. Even the match that the Aussies, won, which came over in Perth against Sri Lanka, that one, that was still pretty dicey. It took an explosion from Marcus Stoinis to get them over the line. Yeah, it just wasn't like, nobody really fired. To be honest, there's only one player that I could say can hold their head high from this tournament, and that's Glenn Maxwell. every other Australian disappointed.
Yeah, it was really a not ideal tournament for Australia
Mm.
at all. It was just got off on the wrong foot against New Zealand, and they never really just seemed to recover. I mean, Stoinis had his miraculous inning to get them the win in the
Mm.
second match, but after that, it was kind of Glenn Maxwell and everybody else.
Yeah, and look, even Maxwell, I mean, he batted well and he was the top ranked fielder in the tournament, and it wasn't even like it was daylight to second
Mm.
between in the fielding rankings. But yeah, they're just like there wasn't really a single standout performance that you can say for an Australian. There were some nice little cameo moments, like Aaron Finch finally found some form towards the end of the tournament in his last international tournament, but at home, defending the championship, yeah, the Aussies have got to be extremely disappointed with what they put forward.
Yeah, especially as you mentioned, as the defending champions on your home
Mm.
soil, you want to do much better than that and make a run at least to the semifinals, but it wasn't to be. We've
Yeah.
talked about teams, but are there any individual players that stood out to you either in a good way or a bad way?
Yeah, well, there's a few that I'll mention when we get to our 11s of the tournament, our teams of the tournament. So I'll hold off on those ones for the moment. But a few guys that jumped out at me that I didn't expect to put too much forward. I mentioned Arshdeep Singh before, the left arm swing bowler from India, coming in, you know, nominally to replace Jasprit Bumrah. That's a hard thing for any man, but he bowled superbly. He bowled with good speed. He swings the ball sharply, and he swings it late, and he swings it both ways. He had batsmen all tied up in knots all through the tournament. The other one that impressed me, and I've mentioned his name a lot, mostly because I really love saying his name, but Blessing Muzurabani. He only 22 years old, big, long, lanky, quick, but 12 wickets in the tournament. So you know, he was basically fourth, tied with Shaheen Shah Afridi for fourth in the tournament for most wickets. Um, he's a little bit erratic, but again, he's a 22-year-old quick. He's going to be erratic. But when he's on, my goodness, like if he was English or Australian or Indian, or if he'd grown up in one of the powerhouse nations, we would be talking about this guy as the future of fast bowling. I am so super high on Musa Rabbani.
Yeah, Muzrabani, a super fun name to say and a super fun cricket player to watch as well.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
for me, a player that stood out, and don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but I kind of mentioned him in pods past of a guy that stood out to me was the Irish bowler Josh Little. He
Mm.
finished with 11 wickets in the tournament. He did play in the preliminary or in the first round and got 3 wickets in a match against Zimbabwe there. But what really, really stood out to me for the left arm bowler is against England, Australia, and New Zealand in that extremely difficult group. His bowling numbers were against England 2 wickets for 16 runs, Australia was 2 wickets for 21 runs, and New Zealand was 3 wickets for 22 runs. So he stepped up against these powerhouse cricketing nations and really,
Yeah.
really impressed for at least impressed me. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I got to admit, I wasn't too impressed with Little in the preliminary stages. I just thought,
he's
okay, look, it's a small cricketing nation island. This is probably about the best they've got. And look, he's a young bowler. He'll develop, et cetera, et cetera. But as you said, when push came to shove against the big boys, he was excellent. He worked his way into form in this tournament and picked up a hat trick along the way as well, which we can't forget. But yeah, I thought he bowled. The bigger the game, the better he bowled, which again is a really good sign for Irish cricket.
Yeah, it is. Ireland, as we've mentioned, are one of the more minnows in this tournament, and we didn't really give them much chance. I thought all three of
Mm.
those matches would have been blowouts, but they did end up winning against England and made it at least a semi-decent effort against Australia and New Zealand. But Little was really their standout player for me and one of the
Yeah,
standouts of the tournament.
yeah. No, he was good. I warmed to him as the tournament went on. Again, I wasn't impressed at the start, but
Mm.
the more I saw him bowl, the better I thought he looked.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll get into, I think, unless there's any other players you want to talk about before we hop into our team of the tournaments.
We should probably mention some players that have disappointed us. I
Yeah,
don't think we've
that's
touched
true.
on that
Yeah,
yet.
that's a good
So
point.
yeah, so look, it's probably easy for me to name everybody who isn't Glenn Maxwell from the Australian team. Um, look, considering his status within the game, I thought Pat Cummins was poor with both bat and ball. I mean, look, he's a lower order batsman, but he's a good one. But ultimately, his bowling, I just thought he was really poor the whole tournament. But another one we mentioned West Indies before. One of the guys they were leaning on was Kyle Mayers. He's a guy that both opens the batting and the bowling, which is extremely rare, but it shows the ability, it shows the I guess the faith that the West Indian cricketing decision makers have in this young man. And he just didn't fire a shot with bat or ball. Generally, I remember Jacques Kallis, the great South African all-rounder, he was asked whether he felt more pressure being an all-rounder, and he said, "No, I actually feel less because if I go out and bat and I make three, I can still go and affect the match with the ball. I have multiple opportunities to make my impact." So Kyle Mayers, somebody who is opening the batting, opening the bowling, he's got an opportunity every game to make an impact. And I looked at his batting and bowling and thought, I don't know why he's in the team as a batter or a bowler, let alone an all rounder. Look, it might just be that he had a bad tournament. He's a young man; he'll get better. But yeah, he was certainly not what the West Indies were hoping he would be.
No, not at all. He had a pretty rough tournament, as did that entire West Indies side.
Yeah.
But for me, the player that kind of disappointed is the Indian captain, Rohit Sharma,
Mm. Yeah.
who he didn't really ever get going. I think that his highest total in a match in the tournament was 53, so that's a good inning, but that was against the Netherlands. Against everyone else, he had 15 against South Africa, 2 against Bangladesh, 15 against Zimbabwe, 4 against Pakistan, and
Mm.
27 in the semifinal against England. So really nothing to go home and really be excited about for him. And
Yeah.
as one of my Indian friends has said, there's already talks of maybe him being pushed out as the captain, but we'll see about that because this was not a great tournament for him, especially as the leader of India.
Yeah, and look, given he's 35 now, I think Rohit Sharma, it wouldn't surprise if he probably needed a really good tournament, both on an individual level and as a captain, to cement his spot in this side. I honestly, I think your friend might be onto something now. I have a feeling we may have seen the last of Rohit Sharma as an international, which is a shame. He's had a wonderful, wonderful career, but it's a bit of a low note for him to end on, which is a shame.
Yeah, it's just disappointing for India because they had such high hopes after that amazing comeback against Pakistan in the opening match, but just wasn't to be. And they'll go on to 2 years' time. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a very different Indian team at that next World Cup in 2024.
Yeah, there's a few veterans there, but the young guys that have come through for India, I've been quite impressed with. Mohammed Shami is probably, he might not be there next time. I don't think Rohit will be. It'll be interesting to see whether Kohli is. He's still relatively young, but um, Kohli's always struck me as the type who has more going on than just cricket. So it almost wouldn't surprise me if he plays for a couple of years and then pulls the pin while he's still at the top of his game. Yeah, so we could see a bit of a changing of the guard, but the youngsters India have brought through have been very, very impressive, I've got to say. So I reckon we'll see a few of those faces that we've seen for the first time this time around. I think we'll see them a lot longer.
Yeah, 100%. I think we could see this young generation of India start taking over the next couple of years and
Mm.
really see that generational change that we do see eventually with every team, kind of like what the West Indies is going through at the moment.
Mm.
But
Yeah,
unless there's any other players you want to quickly touch on that were disappointing, I say we hop into our team of the tournaments.
I think we jump straight in.
So I'll let you get started and we'll go for like the opening three batters. Who do you have? Or
Yeah, my top order, the my one of my openers is a really, really easy decision, and that's Joss Butler.
yeah.
He takes the gloves for this team and also captains the side as he does for England. He what do you have about 250 odd runs, scored at about 41, but scored quickly, scored aggressively. He's a tone setter for England. And also his captaincy was on the whole right on the money. Every time he pulled a lever, it seemed to work. He guided the team through the loss of Mark Wood, who was a real weapon for that England side, and also through the loss of Dawood Malan, who solidified a batting lineup that behind the openers, Butler and Alex Hales. Yeah, and Alex Hales is an apology for this team. He's a very near miss in making this side. But Milan is the guy who solidifies that the rest of that batting order, and losing him could have been, could have really hurt them. But I think Butler's captaincy as well as his batting, and his wicket keeping was like, he's not the greatest keeper in the world, but his wicket keeping was solid. With everything else he provides, that's all you need. So he's my first opener. My second opener is one of the ones from the minnows, and it's a guy we've mentioned a lot. We loved his game and we loved his hair, and that's Max O'Dowd from the Netherlands. 242 runs at a little over 34 and a half and over, but I mentioned Butler being a tone setter. I thought O'Dowd was a tone setter for the Dutch. An aggressive guy, loves to come out of his crease and attack bowlers on length. It didn't always work, but this is a guy who's playing for the Netherlands against the top bowlers in the world. He can get outclassed, but I thought he was superb in this tournament. And my first drop, my number 3 is, well, it's a pretty easy choice for me. It's Virat Kohli, 296 runs at an average of, and I'll just pause so we can all sit down for this, 98.66 for the tournament. That's ridiculous. But that is just ridiculous. He was the best batsman in this tournament, hands down.
Yeah, that's some insane numbers from him. And it's like you read my mind. I have the exact same opening 3 for mine. I was going Joss Butler, Max O'Dowd, and then actually I believe I had Virat Kohli in the 4th. That's right. I had Surya Kumar Yadav coming in at that first drop, and then followed by Virat Kohli. But still, it's just been a fun tournament, and Virat Kohli has been extremely impressive once again. And I mean, there's a reason he's one of the best players in the world currently.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Look, to mine, it's daylight between him and the next best batsman in this tournament. Well, you've already mentioned your top 4 there. You've thrown in Yadav as well. So, who are your 5 and 6?
So 5. I wanted to kind of go on a little bit of a stretch and say Basteleda. I just have enjoyed watching him, but after today's performance, I'm putting Ben Stokes in there at that 5 spot, followed by Sikandar Raza, who has been just an extremely fun and exciting player to watch for the Zimbabwean side, and really kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people in this tournament. He's been superb on the batting end. Bowling, he's done pretty well as well. So kind of a good all-arounder that I wanted to throw in at that 6th spot.
Yeah, no, it's not a bad shout. I had Yadav as my number 4, so we've already touched on him. 239 runs, an average of close to 60. Yeah, whether you have him at 3 or Virat at 3, ultimately you're getting good batsmen behind your openers. Exactly. I had Glenn Phillips from New Zealand as my number 5. Average of 40 with the bat, 200 runs, and some really explosive innings as well. Like Kane Williamson, who is New Zealand's star batsman, had a scratchy tournament. And whenever Allen and Conway, the 2 New Zealand openers, didn't get it going, someone needed to step up and not just score, but score quickly for New Zealand. And Phillips was more often than not the man that did that. I thought he had a very good tournament. My number 6 might surprise you, but it's Glenn Maxwell. So, I mentioned his fielding. Fielding is so important in T20 cricket, where every run is precious. The difference in the ICC's fielding rankings for this tournament, the difference between 1st and 2nd was about the same as the difference between 2nd and 9th. So he was like streets ahead of everybody else in the field. Picked up 3 wickets with an economy rate of 6, so he's a good 6th bowler for you. And also, scored at 39 and a third runs per innings. Yeah, and outside of the fact that he scored runs, he's the sort of guy that if you need someone to come in and just create runs out of nothing, Maxwell might be the best in the world at that. His wagon wheel is literally 360 degrees at the ground. He has every shot in the book, probably overuses some of those more unusual shots, but he's someone who can do a little bit of everything. So not just, his performances in the field, a little bit with the ball and the bat, and throwing the fit with how he would fit within a team. To me, he's my number 6.
That's fair.
But I'm gonna transition into my 7 and 8 here, because you've mentioned them both, and that's Sikandar Raza and Bas Deleta. So Deleta, he batted quite well, but 13 wickets at 13 was fantastic. Medium pace bowler, so he gives you something different as well. And Sikandar Raza is like, he is the African Glenn Maxwell, like great fielder. Does a little bit of everything with the bat and ball. 10 wickets at 15, 219 runs at a little over 27. And an explosive player as well. He's the sort of guy that, he might go out for 3, but the next time he bats, he might get you 70. To me, having those 3 as my all-rounders, Maxwell, Raza, and Deleta, I think their performances are great, and they give me a nice deep batting lineup with some bowling options.
Yeah, I think that's a solid 2 picks right there. Like I said, I thought I was going to have Deleta in there, and I had Sikandar Raza in, but I think that gets us into kind of some of the bowlers now, because I know at least in my 7 and 8, I have started getting into bowling, but I'll just start with my 7 and 8 to catch up with you. I have Sam Curran, who not as much well known for his bat. He did stage off some stuff in the match against India in the semifinal, and one of the other matches, I believe. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but I know he just played a good supporting role. And then I had Shaheen Afridi, who, the Pakistani bowler we've mentioned a lot today, is just superb throughout the tournament. But what other bowlers do you have on your side?
Yeah, well, I've got those 2 in as my 9 and 10 in the order, Curran and Afridi. And my last bowler is Wanindu Hasaranga from Sri Lanka. The tournament's leading wicket taker, picked up, I think it was 15 wickets. Yeah, 15 wickets. Oh, apologies.
So
before the final, he was the leading wicket taker. Curran overtook him. So 15 wickets, and he was the one Sri Lankan bowler that was consistently tough to get away. So he didn't just pick up wickets. He was somebody who was like, spinners can sometimes get carted in T20 cricket if they don't get it right. And leg spin is such a difficult art. And he just seemed to be always on the money. I thought he bowled superbly without a lot of support from the rest of his attack.
Yeah, I have him in my lineup as well. And Hasaranga, another just kind of fun name to say that just rolls off the tongue. But he's just been a very impressive bowler. I believe he had the most wickets at the World Cup last year in 2021, which, correct me if I'm wrong, was pushed back from 2020 due to COVID. Was that right? Or
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so, I assumed that. And so he was shown that he can do it in 2 straight World Cups for him. He's been impressive. But I'm hopping into my my other 3 bowlers. I have Shadab Khan, who 11 wickets, or an economy of 6.34 and a strike rate of just over 14. So I think he did well. Then was Hasaranga, and my last guy on my lineup was Anrich Nordi, who I thought he was relatively good for South Africa. 11 wickets, only gave up 94 runs in his 5 innings of work. So he had a very, very low economy of 5.37 and a strike rate of 9.5. But I think he was a good bowler. He had a couple big matches and deserves a shout for my team.
Yeah, he was on my short list as well. Like, I had a few guys here who, just looking at the guys who I couldn't quite squeeze into this, Nortje was one of them, Alex Hales, Nissanka and Mendes from Sri Lanka, Arshdeep Singh, who I almost feel bad that he's not on this side. Same with Musa Ramani. And I had Mark Wooden there as well. So I thought he was excellent until he got injured. So just run through your 11 again.
Butler, O'Dowd, Yadav, Virat Kohli, Stokes, Sikandar Raza, Sam Curran, Afridi, Shadab Khan, Harsaranga, and Nordi.
Okay, so I've got Butler, O'Dowd, Virat, Yadav, Phillips, Maxwell, Raza, Delata, Curran, Afridi, and Hasaranga. So we've had a little bit of crossover there. I think we've got five or six. One, two, three, four, five, six,
Seven, I
seven,
believe.
seven. Yeah, we got seven that are the same. Um, okay, so yeah, we've got. So it looks like you've gone for a few more bowlers. I've gone
I
for a few
have.
more all rounders.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
We'll have to put these up on Twitter and get some,
yeah, we'll
get a few votes out of people and see
get
which
some
way they
out.
want to go.
Yeah, exactly. See what the people who they agree with. But
Yeah,
unless there's anything else you have, any final thoughts? Because this is the last episode of our
yeah,
cricket podcast,
yeah.
and it's been a pleasure. It's been fun, but
It's been a lot of fun. I mean, I've grown up with cricket. Cricket's a national sport in this country, and to have a World Cup in your home country, it's always a special thing. Even if your home country does perform like crap, like mine did, but to see some of these young cricketers coming through to really deep dive on some of the stuff that if I was just watching it and not analysing it, I wouldn't have looked at has been a lot of fun for me. Talking to you, Jerry, has been great on this. I've mentioned it before. I think I found the one American that actually has a passion for cricket.
yeah.
350 million of you, and I found the one. So this is, yeah, for me, this has been a lot of fun. It's been a great tournament. We've had some amazing matches, including the final, which was low key, quite a tense and brilliant match to watch. Wonderful performances, minnows stepping up, some big names flaming out, both in teams and individuals. We've had a little bit of everything in this one. As the great Bill Laurie would say, it's all happening.
Really has, and we've really seen a little bit of everything from the opening round through the Super 12 to the semifinals and the finals. This is it from us. If you guys should check out all of our other stuff if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel for Vendetta Sports Media. Reach out to us. Tell us what you think of our teams of the tournament, or if we chose a player that you think was performing well that we didn't mention. But reach out to Jarrod on Twitter at hey_it's_JP. Reach out to me at JerryF007 and check out all of our other stuff on Twitter for Vendetta Sports Media. I'm doing a lot of the soccer. Jarrod's been doing a lot of basketball coverage, but our website as well has a ton of other things that we're covering. And we just are here for the world of sports and keeps going. Next Cricket World Cup will be the next T20 one will be 2 years time, and the US will be hosting it. So I'll definitely be trying to get to some of those. But for me and Jarrod, thank you guys for watching and have a great rest of your day.